Hello, everyone. I'm Dian Griesel, also known as Silver Disobedience, and I am beyond excited. This is an inaugural pilot of the Silver Disobedience podcast, Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast, being filmed at Manhattan Center. We are in TV2 on 34th Street and 8th Avenue, and I could not be more excited, and I want to give a major shout out to everyone who's making this all possible today. I'm also really psyched to have my two guests today. Judy Katz, who is an 84-year-old ghostwriter who's got quite an illustrious life she has led, along with Detective First Grade Nick Arhakos. And he has been with the New York City Police Department for over 33 years. And we are going to be talking about aging out loud. And the purpose of these podcasts is to really challenge the status quo, to look at things that we're so entrenched in, so convinced of, and let's flip them on the heads and maybe give them a new look, a new perspective, and a new way of seeing things for all of us. So I'm going to start by saying hello to you both, and thank you for being here.
And thank you for having us.
And Judy, you've written a book.
Yes.
From 81 to 84 and counting. Now this is
from 18 to 84.
18, right, 18 to 84, whoops. So it's your memoir. It tells a lot of good stories. And I want to know, being a storyteller that you are, what's your biggest takeaway from aging?
You know, I feel that aging is inevitable, but feeling, looking, or acting old is a choice that we make. And I want to help change the conversation about aging. That's why I tell people I'm 84, unabashedly. And it's not because I want them to say, oh no, you don't look 84. It's because there's a big difference with how you're perceived. There are people who are 50s and 60s, early 70s, who are little wrinkled up crab apples, who have given up on life. And then there are people, I'll include myself, who are in their 80s and 90s, doctors, lawyers, CEOs, creative people who defy what you see on television often. You know, when they show an 84-year-old, they show a wrinkled up crone sometimes, toothless, bent over, and that's not moi.
Now, what should we call you for this show? Nick Detective Arhakos?
Nick is
Detective
fine.
Nick? Okay,
Nick is
just
fine.
keep in mind, he is a detective first grade. Very rare achievement. So
Thank you.
I have a question for you. You obviously have seen things that most people can't imagine, being with the police department.
Correct.
Especially the police department of New York City.
Yes.
How does that impact how you view life and aging?
Well, it's a big question, and how I view life is it's very precious and aging, because what happens is during the career, you end up seeing tragedy, you end up seeing loved ones who have passed within the home, and you're interacting with the family members. So you want to bring that into perspective in your own life, and you want to say, I need to live and enjoy life. And the aging part, I do believe that we age, meaning law enforcement, a little more rapidly, not on purpose, but on what we're stressed out about, what we might try not to bring home, but mentally it might be in their head. You know, tragic accident, and you're seeing a little baby that might have perished in the accident. You know, different things, who might have been a victim of a crime, and you're trying to walk them through and let them know you're going to be the voice for them. Or, you know, in a homicide, that person has no voice. Right. So you see how life changes like that. So you want to kind of take a step back, enjoy the finer things in life, and slow the aging process down, if that is possible, like this young lady here. Yeah. She's amazing. So, you know, that's what I try to do. You know, I try to always kind of decompress and just enjoy the finer things in life, and family and friends.
You know, those are really great points. And stress, thinking about aging, thinking about messages we get from the media. It's funny, I've done campaigns where they'll say, oh no, you can't say old. I am older. I can live with that word. Or the other day I heard somebody say we're working on a campaign for the insecurities we have when we get older. And I thought that was funny because I actually feel a lot more secure as I get older. So let's talk about that. What do you think, Judy, about your insecurities when you were in your teens, 20s, 30s versus your insecurities now? We certainly have them, but they shift.
Yes, I want to say that you don't see, going back to stress as well as insecurities, you don't see many 80-year-old hairdressers or construction workers, or even, some jobs are very physically demanding and some jobs are stressful and boring, and they just bore down on you. But creative people, writers, directors, thinkers, can keep going into their 80s and 90s, and like Betty White and other people like that, till 100 if they can make it. So I don't have any insecurities because I believe you shouldn't, but I tell myself, don't regret what you no longer have, your youth, your beauty, maybe certain energy. Look what you have now. I am so lucky to be 84, and I hope to be 85 and on like that. I don't know if I'll make 100, but every day is a gift.
Stress and creativity are interesting points. And Nick, I'd like your perspective on stress and creativity, because I don't think you necessarily have to be in a so-called creative industry to be a creative person.
Correct. But I marvel at people who are talented in creating things. But I'll give you,
Does creativity go into solving a crime?
It does. It really, it definitely, because what happens is you have to put all the pieces together, and it's not just you; it's everyone else that's involved. It's the responding officers, it's the cameras that you pull the video from, it's the investigation of the detectives, it's the detectives who come from crime scene to put all the pieces together. It's you mapping out maps of the travel period of the possible suspect, and all of a sudden realizing, wait, how can he have traveled this much when his miles on his car is that much? Where are we missing? Where are we missing
thinking.
7 or 8 miles here? Let's retrace the steps. So there is definitely creativity, and there's also, I think, creativity. I'll speak for myself. I have multiple things that go on in my life besides me being a detective. Next week I fly out, I go to Kansas, and I take my skill set and I try to give back to law enforcement. I'll teach a class in Kansas on executive protection. I also have multiple businesses that I am creating and I'm running with. So there's a lot in life, and you said the word shift. There's a Dr. Wayne Dyer, I don't know if you heard him, and the shift, and that is one of the most powerful things I've ever watched. As you've written, how many books?
55 and counting.
55 and counting. I got through maybe a half a book. Thank God for audio, because now I can go through the book quicker. So God bless you on that. So,
what do you think the biggest perceptions are that people have about getting older and what's going to happen? And there are certain realities. So let's break down some of the realities of things we might need to adjust as we get older. And what are the real fallacies that get thrown at us that maybe have nothing to do with age?
Well, one is sexual.
Okay. Leave it to you to bring up that.
Is at the end?
No.
I mean, there's a fallacy that you can't have a great time as you get older, and there are certain physical changes, but that doesn't mean you can't have a wonderful time. So that's one of the, that's one of the perceptions. And one is that you necessarily will lose your cognitive abilities. And I do sometimes look at the screen and I see an actor and I know who it is, but I can't think of a name. But I just go into the hard drive and it takes a little longer, but I always get it. And I think also we have so many things coming at us these days that it's hard to always have everything right up top, you know. So I think that there are a lot of misconceptions. I think people get better with age. So does wine. So does cheese. So if wine and cheese can get better with age, so can we.
What do you think, Dick?
Well, I'm very happy to hear what she said on the sexual end. So I have a lot more, you know. I'm glad. I'm like, all right, this is good now. So I think what happens is for myself, I feel the physical ability is not there like I used to. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still push myself for working hours. Give you an example. I was up Tuesday morning at 5:30 and we didn't finish up until 11 o'clock that night. So I went all day. I went from, we went from here to Albany, multiple meetings, a meeting in the evening. So I feel my stuff diminished that way. But on the mind, I feel that I can still improve because it's not the physical aspect when, you're doing an extra rep in the gym and you're like, oh, I'm really tired. Your mind, you can keep working it. So I know everyone says age is just a number, but last year I had hernia surgery and my doctor said, are you training for the world's strongest man? I said, no. I said, but I used to lift that. And he goes, used to. Stop. He goes, otherwise you'll come back with another hernia. So I feel that you can sharpen your mind and you can still stay in shape. And I'm so grateful for that first on the awesome. Anyway, I feel that we can always improve. Maybe not the person who's doing the marathon can take off time because now they're in their 60s compared to when they were in their 30s. But, that's the way I look at it. I know my mind can become much sharper as I'm aging. I hope anyway.
Nick, you just said something that's really interesting, which is, staying sharp, keeping ourselves thinking. You see so many things in different magazines, especially those magazines for us gray and silver-haired people or white as I am, just like Peter over there. And one of the things is that, you see crossword puzzles, do a crossword puzzle. I think of my creativity and no offense to the crossword puzzlers of the world, but I really think there's a lot of other ways we can stay sharp. You mentioned, reading books or audiobooks, Nick, Judy, interviewing people. I'd love to hear the different ways we each go about and suggestions to be lifelong learners, which I think really keeps your brain sharp.
Okay.
Judy.
So last year at age 83, we have a pool in my building. I hired a pool person to train me, and I learned how to swim for the first time in my life. And it is wonderful. And also, I used to work out by myself, but now I need somebody keeping my feet to the fire. So I work out with a trainer one day in the pool and one day in the health club, the gym that we have in my building. So, yeah.
And now that's physical, and that's also, so you're adding mobility into the lifelong learning with the swimming. What also mentally keeps you sharp?
I have learned to meditate. And I find that I still have a monkey brain and still it's all over the place, but just taking a few minutes to calm yourself down and sort of empty yourself of all the concerns and just breathe is very, very helpful. Yeah.
Nick, you said you're working on a variety of different businesses, which I'm sure there's a huge learning curve with them. Is that what you're doing to be a lifelong learner?
Yes, a lot of training on different aspects of, about 5 different venues I have that I'm working. So it's 5 different businesses, and each one kind of, basically I want to serve as many people as I can. I think Jim Rohn said, serve the many, it leads to greatness. So I want to continue serving, even if it's not in a law enforcement capacity all the time. I want to bring value to other people. And I have to learn on how to do different things. And I must say, young people help me big time. I learn from them, not saying that I want to learn how to do a spreadsheet on a computer. That doesn't excite me, but just their thinking and their way they go about life. And I'm not saying I did anything wrong through my life, but 33 years prior to that, I worked construction. So I was instilled to work, build a pension, build a nest egg, work. But younger people, I see them, they do what they love. For example, my daughter is in Peru and she does healing. She's a spiritual healer. And I said, great, I'm glad you followed your dreams. And that's where I learned from my daughter, my son, my other children, from older children, Olivia, Nadia, and her son Paul. So I learned from the younger generation, even the younger detectives when they come in. Sometimes they got to teach the old dog new tricks. Sometimes it's a little harder for me to learn, but, I open it to learning from everyone.
That's a really good point. When I started the Silver Disobedience podcast, which I'll just say was a blend of, obviously, I turned silver at a pretty young age, and also the idea of civil disobedience, that people could respectfully disagree. So one of the things that was happening, it was 2016, and there was, a divisive election going on. And at the same time, the phrase, okay, boomer, started to fly around on the internet. And you'd have the boomers saying, well, they're a kid, they know nothing. And I think it's so important to really value each age and the things that everyone can learn. I mean, I know 16 and 17, 21-year-olds that are completely burnt out. They're burnt out at 21. And I know 16, 17, 5-year-olds, 30-year-olds that are in the peak of their life of how they're learning and embracing and looking forward to. So you can burn out at any age, What do you think are the things you worried about when you were in those 20s and 30s and 40s, each of those decades for both of you, things you worried about then, and what you would tell yourself now in retrospect about those things you were so worried about?
I worried about looking good. I worried about having enough money. I worried about would people like me. I worried about the world and all the bad things. And I am a dog crazy person, so I wanted all dogs to be safe. And now I still want all dogs to be safe, but I don't worry about money or people liking me or how I look. I'm just totally thrilled to be here. And one of the things that I think I'm very privileged is in ghostwriting books, I get to be that person. I get to go into their heart and soul, and that is such a privilege, and it's a learning experience. Every time I get somebody's life story, like the Holocaust memoir that I did, that was extraordinary. And, business leaders and other people. So I am so blessed. I don't worry about anything anymore.
Dick, well, what would you say, like when you look back on your 20s and 30s and 40s, the things you were so worried about that either did materialize or didn't? That you could wish you could look back and have, patted yourself on the back and say, Nick, you're going to handle this just fine. What would those things be?
Well, in the younger years, you ask how you handle things, right? Mm-hmm. So in my 20s, you're always worried about what people think. Mm-hmm. I need to do this, I need to do this. So it's a tragedy, but I knew at one point I figured I was going to be a strong individual. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, maybe not on the physical, but emotionally and in my mind, because when I was younger, my brother had died in a tragic accident. He was an elevator mechanic. Then he died on the Lower East Side on 13th Street, and he left behind 2 children. And the reason I'm not bringing this to be a sad story, I just want to bring this up to explain.
That's just a life-changing incident for sure.
And the people who knocked on the door were representatives of the union. And they asked I was home that day from work, and they were like, who are you? I wasn't a police officer at the time. They asked who I was, my brother, yes. And they told me about this tragic accident. Now, there's no cell phone back then. Right. Lucky maybe there might have been a beeper, but I don't even recall a beeper. And there are people right now on the podcast, young, be like, "It's a beeper. Like, what is he?" Google it, you'll find out, because Siri tells you everything. So I had to figure out a way, because we had to get to my brother's wife, because she was home. So I had to physically go there. But prior to that, my parents, because you're not supposed to bury your child. So at that moment, I had to call certain people. So, of course, siblings, I call my sister. We had to get people over to tell my parents what happened, make sure they were able to get back home. Then I had to go to my sister-in-law. And when I got there, she's like, "I thought you were homesick. You weren't feeling good." "No, I'm not." And blah, blah, blah. And now there's 3 guys in suits behind me. And I had to sit her down. So from that point forward, now, of course, life, things start to change. So, I'm sorry I took up a lot of that time.
Not at all. That's a story about living.
Yeah. But from that point forward, now I'm also saying, oh, what does this person think about me? I want to be accepted. Depending on where you grow up in the United States, you want that marriage, you want that house, you want the car, you see everybody around. And yes, I'm fortunate to have 2 beautiful children, and I did that first go around, nice home and everything like that. But I think, comparing, that was another problem. When you compare yourself to other people out there, you're not giving yourself enough credit. And you should, I've looking back, I'm like, what? I didn't do too bad. Yeah, I didn't have a McMansion, but we had a good life. So, as time went on, I set boundaries, and I'm not being disrespectful to somebody, but I'm really not going to care what you think of me anymore, because, next week, it's not going to change my life. So.
It's so interesting you say that. And you brought up the word comparison. And when I was in 2016, when I was 56, I was shocked when I was scouted and offered to join Wilhelmina Models. And I remember my agent, Ginny Conquest, who I adore and love, who you've met, saying, Diane, this wouldn't be happening if you were 18. And I'm like, oh, believe me, I know this wouldn't be happening if I was 18. And I think about how fortunate I was, because when I would, go on set or meet people and I would see the competitiveness between the comparisons that went on between the 18 to 24-year-old models versus you get a bunch, if it's a casting of the grandmothers, the ladies like me, we're all sitting around, hey, how are you doing? How are the kids? Everyone's talking, it's relaxed. The comparison factor has dropped exponentially. And that is just such, to me, a gift of age that I wish I could just be the fairy dust and give it to all the younger people that I meet that I know. I remember the angst. I remember it painfully when people say I wish I could go back to high school. I'm like, oh, no, that wasn't a timeout, Josh. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go back there. No, never again. That insecurity you felt. What do you think about that? What would you say to your younger self if you had that opportunity?
I would like to say that I have been fortunate to travel all over the world, mostly to do books with people in China and other places in the world. And what I discovered is that we are so much more alike than we are different. And that is why my heart is breaking with the wars that are going on today and all those things. It's not about taking sides. It is that we're human beings, and any pain, suffering, hunger, it's not right. And that's what gives me pause, because we are so much alike. We're humans. We're human animals. The other thing I want to say is I have trouble sleeping because my brain is so active. So that doesn't bother me. I get up in the middle of the night and think of titles or things I want to do, and I just go with it. So when you have something like that, don't fight it. Just let it happen. And I find that I'm energized and I'm not tired when I do that.
What do you tell those, either your kids or younger guys on the force, when you meet them and you can tell they're stressed? They're trying to get to that detective first grade. They want that power. What do you tell them, Nick? How do you coach them? How do you assure them, it's going to unfold fine?
Well, whether you believe in religious, universe, whatever, you have to put your work in, but you have a path that you're going to follow. I always tell people I'm the most successful failure out there, and I'll tell you why. And the reason I say that, I was in narcotics and I was working, and I wanted to go to ESU. That's Emergency Service Unit. The guys in a big truck, they're up on a bridge, they're saving people. So I trained with a couple of guys. Now, as you see on the camera, it's only 5 pounds really, technically, it put on me. But anyway, so as I was trying to do the run, I had to do it in a certain amount of time. I failed. Prior to that, I took the exam to be a sergeant. I failed right when my daughter was born, so I stopped studying for like a month. That's not an excuse, I get it. But I failed the sergeant's test, I failed the run. Now, if I didn't fail those things and turn around and go, you know what, that was wrong. Whether you believe universe, God, maybe I was saved from 9/11 because maybe I would have been in ESU, whatever it was. Now you got to remember, like you explained, I'm a first grade detective. I made my way to first grade from my supervisor saying I was doing a good job. Maybe I would have not got to that position. Maybe I wouldn't have had the path that I have now. So don't ever say, oh, I failed. You didn't fail. There's a different path. Maybe it's a different way that you have to bring that in. So I tell guys, and I tell my kids, it's not a failure. It's a learning experience. You know not to do something a certain way. And that's what I try to guide them. Don't ever feel that you failed. You know, we can tweak it. We can learn from our mistake, or, you know, not a failure. That's what I say.
That is such an important point. And one of the things a lot of the people who I engage with are older. And so we've been talking about age, and we've been talking about the impact on younger people looking older. And there are studies that younger people are very worried about getting older. But there are also studies where older people, some people are looking back and they're looking at their lives with regret. And that's a big fear for people when it comes to dying. They're worried about what have I missed? What will I regret? And so I think one of the most important things anyone can think about is, what can I do today to not have those regrets? And also when I hear people talk about, whether it's marriages or if only I did this or if only I did that, I always think of the movie It's a Wonderful Life, because of the sequence of events that if only he wasn't born, these things wouldn't have happened. Or I think, if only I didn't marry my husband, I wouldn't have had the 2 fantastic children I have that I love dearly. And the genetic gene pool never would have gotten me anyone else without my husband. So it's funny when people look back and talk about regrets. So let's talk about that. Judy, Nick, I'd love your perspectives on when people talk about regret or regrets you think you have and how you reframe them. Because a lot about regret is simply reframing it, giving it a new look.
Right. I work with some of my authors are disabled people, some quite serious disabled. And every one of them, in all honesty, say that they would not change that disability because it made them the person that they are today. And I say that about me. I don't believe in regrets. If I could go back, which none of us can, I would do some things differently, obviously. But everything that I have done has led me step by step to who I am today. So if I can honestly say I like myself, that means that I am not sorry for any missteps. And I don't believe in failure. I think that everything is a learning experience.
Those are really good points. Really good points. Nick, what do you think?
Regrets, I'll just...
I thought you were going to start singing first.
No singing.
Regrets.
No.
I have a few.
Yeah, you don't want me singing, dancing. I got feet that don't move. The hips move great. Upper body all good. Feet, we have problems. For regrets, I'll say spending more time with your loved ones and enjoying and having direct conversation with them. Like I said, I explained about my brother, my parents. I tried to spend time with them, but not realizing the song, Cats in the Cradle.
Yes.
So
I think about that all the time, that song.
So I tried, and I didn't do a good job at it. So I tell people all the time, spend that extra time, spend it with your parents, spend it with a loved one. Those are the only type of regrets, because if I didn't do all the things I've done through my life, I wouldn't be in the greatest position that I'm in, meaning I'm with the greatest woman, her 3 children, my 2 children, other outside people that I've met. So those steps led me to very, very happy and fulfilled life right now. And I'm still trying to fulfill it. So the only regrets would be maybe I should have spent more time. My mother, rest in peace, she had to go in a nursing home. So the big joke with my sister was very regimented. 9 a.m. she was there, 12 o'clock she was there. My mother used to call me the cable guy. She goes, your brother, he comes in, he drinks, he brings me coffee, and then he leaves. He's like the cable guy. I never know what time he's showing up. I'm like, Mom, yeah, but, maybe I should have give her that time for, I'm going to be here at this time, but work got in the way. But I would go visit her, and that's what she used to call me, the cable guy. You never know when he's going to show up. Between 9 and 5, he shows up. So,
what you just said makes me think about the ideas of anger and forgiveness, which I think too much anger and lack of self-forgiveness or forgiveness of others, I think, are very aging qualities. And, they say anger is the container that corrodes it, or anger corrodes the container that holds it. That's how the expression goes. And, in people, I think when you hold on to anger or, people are busy. People are busy. We're all living busy lives. We have bills to pay. We have responsibilities at work. We do have those families. You want more time with everyone. And then, your kids are rushing and you're taking them here and you're doing that. But to me, one of the biggest things that I would advise anyone that's worried about age is work on forgiveness. What do you think?
I'd like to say that if you're angry at somebody and you're bitter and hurt, you are giving them power over you. Yeah, you're holding something that just corrodes you from the inside. So I don't hold on to that. I just think of them as somebody's child who went wrong.
But it's also, to me, it even goes beyond that, because it's not just the reflect on you. To me, I forgive people to just let it go from me. And if someone chooses to accept it, it's like you have to be able to move forward. What do you think?
Well, I look at it this way. If you're angry, that person is renting space in your head. Yeah. And we don't need that. We don't need that negativity in our world. Forgiveness, yes. Boundaries, yes. I could forgive. I'll never forget. And I'll set boundaries. Like, I'll never, ever be disrespectful. I will say, politely, no, I don't want to attend, or whatever it might be. But I forgive, but I'll never forget. And I set boundaries that way. But I don't lay in bed going, I'm so mad at this person. It's just not me, because those people won't have any bearing in my life going forward. That's the way I look at it. But I will forgive, and I'll walk away, and I'll just set those boundaries the way I feel.
If you were going to define living out loud today in 2025, what does that look like to you at your stage and age of life?
Well,
Judy.
If I could just tell a brief story. I was on the Johnny Carson show in the green room one time with George Burns, and he was 100 years old, and he was a wrinkled up little prune, really, sitting there in a corner like he was dead. And then it finally came time for him to be on and be interviewed. 2 beautiful young women took his arm in each direction, and they walked him to the seat next to Johnny. He sat down, and it was like he woke up. He was amazing. He was funny. He was warm. He was everything. And when they went to commercial, he shrank into himself like a little prune, and they carried him off again. So that's how I want to be. I want to love my life so much that I can just,
turn it on and turn it off.
Turn it on and turn it off. Yeah, exactly.
That is funny. Nick, what's aging out loud to you these days?
I guess aging out loud. I guess doing things that maybe will be out of my comfort zone. Doing things that I would never dream of doing and then just doing it. Once again, I'm no Fred Astaire. I don't dance well. I think I do. Especially after I have 2 or 3 drinks, I'm like, hey, I'm doing a great job. But I'll dance and I'll enjoy myself, and learning from other people. Never be embarrassed when you don't understand something. So I work with. I just got out of high school. They were like, thank God you're out of high school. Boom, no college. So I don't have the higher education. So when I do work with people, especially the individual who's, the dignitary who I'm with, law degree, brilliant man, and we might be going somewhere, and he'll say to me some word, and I'll just look at him and I'm like, hey, boss, high school education, about 90 years of college. I said, please educate me on that word. So I never feel, so I out loud, in the past, I'll be like, oh, let me look this up in a dictionary, well, now Google. But I'll ask, I'll say, well, what does that mean?
Right.
Can you, rephrase that for me? So
when we talk about the different phases and times in our lives, and we mention regrets and things we would maybe tell our younger selves, and some people, as Nick mentioned, or any of us, we've, maybe been married, separated, divorced, lost a spouse, life hits us all hard at different times and different phases. What would you tell someone about finding love at any stage of life?
I have a lot of everyone's younger than me, pretty much. Younger women who are very disillusioned with online dating, and they can't meet anybody, and then they think they're too old to meet anybody. And I tell them this story, which is all true, that at 75, I had a rabbi friend who came to me and he said, would you date a 98-year-old? And I said, I was 75. I said, a 98-year-old wants to date? He said, no, he wants to get remarried. And I met Jerry Siegel. He was extraordinary. He happened to be a steel magnate. And we fell madly in love, and we had the most wonderful time traveling, private jet. We had estates all over the place, and we had the most wonderful 4 months. And then we were walking in his pool in the Dominican Republic, and he asked me if I would move in with him to, his estate in Mamaroneck and his house on Fifth Avenue. And I said, let's discuss it tomorrow because we're leaving in a couple of days. Don't have to get out of the pool. And he died the next day. So I had a wonderful time with him, and it's never too late. Somebody reached out to me recently who said he's been thinking about me since 2009, and he's finally ready to meet me. And he's quite extraordinary. He's 87 and in great shape. So it's never too late, women.
Would you say the same thing, Nick, from the male perspective?
100%. It's never too late. Listen, when you go into a relationship and you have the relationship and you think everything is great and it's going just the way you think it's supposed to go, but then certain things happen. Maybe you grow apart, maybe your ideas change, your perspective, or whatever it might be. And fortunately, I am in the happiest stage of my life in a relationship too. Sad to say, but her husband had passed.
Okay.
And unfortunate for the family and them, but fortunate for me to have met her, create a relationship, being accepted by not only her children, by her side of the family, and by the in-laws. Wow. The in-laws accepted me with open arms. And to give a quick story, the last name is D'Alessio, and my favorite teacher was D'Alessio, and that's her sister-in-law. Yes, small world. We don't have enough time for this segment, but we'll talk about that too. So
yeah,
I want to end on a positive note because we're we've talked about a lot of things, and I think a lot of it's been very positive. But one of the things that, people look at the news today and they get very stressed out, and we're living in a 24/7, 365 news society, so it's easy to be bombarded by the news. We were talking earlier. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, and I know you are too, Judy, the black and white lines on the TV, because the TV went off. There was no, there were the 3 stations, and then there was no programming till the next morning. So I often think of the lines in the song, "We Didn't Start the Fire." Billy Joel did the first one, and I think it's Fall Out Boy maybe did a updated version of it. And I always try to remind people we didn't start the fire. Humanity is something that goes on and on and on. So you want to be able to focus on yourself, control yourself. What would be something you would tell yourself today, someone younger, about how to view life and the world in the bigger picture that we all get up to and show up to every day? We'll start
We
with you,
all
Judy.
have an expiration date. So loving yourself should not be an option. You should love yourself because you are of the stuff of stars. Our composition is the same as the stars. And we're such a miracle on this little tiny dot of a planet in the big universe. We are miracles, walking miracles. So love yourself and be kind to other people. Everybody has something that they're dealing with. So being kind, that's what I tell people.
I have to cut in and say, I always think of that Bradley Trevor Greer book, which was one of my favorite books to read our children when they were very little. And he pointed out, yes, we are made of stardust, but so is meatloaf. So just a funny thing to keep in mind. Add a little levity. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely enjoy life, laugh more. Like you said, what would be different from my 20s and 30s? Maybe I wouldn't do things then that I do now, because if it's a laugh for everybody. Everyone's going to get a good laugh out of it, and so be it. Like, just enjoy life. And yes, we have to be serious in certain roles, but don't bring that and at stress level. Enjoy life. Listen, I make fun of myself all the time. They're like, "Do you hear us?" And I'm like, no. They go, "You're never." I said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention," and they make fun of me. Like, people have a conversation, like, "He didn't hear a word we said." Then there's times I'm like, "I heard that," and they're like, "Oh, you're listening." So I'm paying attention. But just someone's having a good time, just enjoy it, embrace it. Don't get mad.
Judy, you mentioned expiration dates, and I always think of the cards that people give people when they turn 50 years old, where they say, "Oh, you're halfway through," or "It goes downhill from here." And then I think of the expression, I don't remember who it was where I heard it the first time, but it was that you never know when the second half of your life began. And that, especially since you mentioned September 11th, Nick, was such a big eye-opening day for me. And it changed my life, on top of, plane crashes and a boat crash that was probably worse than my 4 plane crashes. But it was really on September 11th, I thought about how you never know when the second half of your life began. And, I don't know if everyone really thinks about that as a statement, but people say, "Oh, I'm at 50. How many 100-year-olds do we all know that we would want to be? And you could be 20 and you may be at the halfway mark in your life. So it's like that sense of urgency that expression creates for me. And I tell myself it every day. Diane, you don't know when the second half of that life began.
Wait a second.
Thoughts?
The second half of my life has begun?
I don't know. Maybe
I
it
don't
has.
know.
Maybe you're going to
I don't-
168. It could be.
I'm not very good in math, but I didn't know the second half of my life.
We don't know if it did.
That's right.
We don't know what day it started.
That's right.
For you, at the rate you're going, it's very possible. So I want to really thank you both. Any parting words of good cheer to everybody in our audience?
I love you. Be kind to each other. Be kind to your dogs and cats. And just love yourself.
Just notice there is a higher power. I thank God, and that's who I believe in. I'm not saying that you have to believe in that, the universe, whatever. But why did he spare me on September 11th? Why he spared me so far up to this part in my life? I don't know. I buried 3 guys last year who I worked side by side with in the garbage dump. Well, landfill at biggest crime scene. So just embrace each day. And I thank the Lord for allowing me another day on this earth to maybe impact in a positive way as best I can. So love yourself. And I am so grateful for you, Diane. And you are remarkable. An amazing woman. And the whole crew and everybody here. I'm blessed that you asked me to come on. Thank you.
I'm so glad
and
you
thank
did.
you to the audience for listening.
Well, I just want to, again, start off with thanking Judy Katz, Detective Nick Arhakos, everyone here at Manhattan Center. It's been a great experience to be here today, and I am so excited. This is the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. I'm Dian Griesel, your host, and I really hope you hit subscribe and that you share this with everyone you know. And did I mention subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. Hit subscribe. And you'll also, on the podcast page, you'll find everyone's information and plenty of links if you want to get in touch. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day. Hey, make it a week, make it a lifetime. Have a good time.